Alrighty, I hope you guys got your candy because I have mine right here. Yes! Ooh! Oh, we got some fruit snacks. That's so perfect. Awesome. Do you guys have a piece? Does each of you guys have a piece of paper? Go ahead and grab one if you don't have one yet. Mine's just printer paper and it works great. If you have construction paper, notebook paper, anything will work. And of course, a marker. Our session today, Skittles and Scales, is to kind of introduce all of you guys to how music works and why it's worth. Sometimes music theory can be frustrating and a little bit daunting, but if you know why we're doing something, it makes all the difference in the world. And all that comes down to this lovely piece of paper. So we are going to start. So this grand staff tells musicians exactly what notes to play on the piano or on the violin, any instrument. All instruments know how to read music. And from here, you can literally do, composers can have you do anything. And you, if you wanted to try writing music, if you learn how to write music and you write it down on this thing called a grand staff, then any musician will be able to read your music. It's very, very cool. It's kind of like reading, just like we learn how to read, and then you can read all kinds of books and stories just because you know how to read. So that works the same way with music. Alrighty, so this is our goal. This is what we're all gonna draw together. And I'm gonna switch this out for my blank piece of paper. So hopefully you guys all have yours. Here we go. Alrighty, so first up, you're gonna take your piece of paper and you are going to fold it in half, hot dog style, so the long ways. And give it a nice crease so that you can see it real well. Hot dog style. Perfect. Alrighty. I'm going to open this back up. And that line right there, we're going to call that our middle C line. It's invisible on our grand staff, which is kind of crazy. You're like, wait, there's a note there, but I don't see it, right? So we only write out the middle C line when we need to put a note on it, like this guy. So that's that middle line that I just folded over. So we don't see that on our music unless we need to put a note on it. So if we don't have a note on it, then we don't have to worry about it. Then it stays a invisible line. All righty, here we go. So once you've got your marker, once you folded it, you got your marker. All right, so that middle line is going to be your anchor. You're gonna draw your 5 lines above and 5 lines below based on where that center line is. Okay, but keep that center line as an invisible line. We don't wanna draw on it. All righty, here we go. So we're gonna draw our treble clef staff first. So you're gonna go about 1/2 inch above your invisible line in the middle. And I'm gonna just draw all the way across, as long as my page will fit it. So there's one. So notice again, there's my invisible line. I'm drawing it 1/2 inch above my invisible line. And then you're gonna draw 5 of them, all about spaced evenly. 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes drawing a straight line can be hard, so just do your best. And then we're also going to put 5 lines below your invisible line. That's going to be our base staff. There's 1, 2, 3. Mine's looking a little wonky. 4. Oh, that one was pretty good. 5. All right, so now we see 10 lines, and then we have the invisible one in the middle. Again, that's where you folded it. And that's where your middle C would be. While you guys are finishing that up, this is great. I can see the kids working, so I know when you guys are. Want to hold up your paper if you're done so I can see your. Oh, perfect. You guys got your lines. Excellent. I'm going to keep going then. All right, so now on your left side, you're going to draw a bar line to connect the top line all the way to your bottom line. Okay. Alrighty, and this next part is called a musical brace. I remember when I was trying to learn how to draw it, it was so awkward, but I covered pages and pages of notebook paper while I was in school and not concentrating on what the teacher wanted me to concentrate on. Our brain just does that sometimes. But I would draw these musical braces over and over until I could figure out how to draw it. So yours might not look like mine if you haven't practiced it, but give it your best. So what we do when we have a grand staff is we want to connect them, and they look like this. That's called a musical brace. So that's how musicians know that the top 5 lines and the bottom 5 lines need to be read at the same time. Alrighty, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our treble clef and our bass clef. So the thing with our treble clef is it makes the high sounds on our piano. I can go even higher, and then the bass clef is where it tells me to play the low notes. All the way to that super low one. Alrighty. Okay, I'm gonna kind of teach you a way to draw it. There are many ways to draw your treble clef. Here's just one way, all right? If you know your letters, this will be really helpful. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I didn't leave quite enough room up here, so I'm gonna use the very top, so about a ½ inch above your top line. You're gonna draw a J all the way down, almost touching your invisible line. Kind of a funny looking J. And then we're gonna use the letter D. So you're going to close the D so that it touches the 4th line of your treble clef. So we've got a J and we have a D. Alrighty, and here's the last one. Is from that same point where you ended your D, you're gonna loop around, you're gonna draw a big G, and it's gonna come around that 2nd line. So it looks a little silly sometimes, but no one can draw a perfect treble clef. Alrighty, so that's your treble clef. And notice that, remember, so we drew the letter G, and that we curved over the 2nd line. So we call this sometimes also the G clef, because it tells us that this note that's going to sit right here on the 2nd line will be a G. Okay, we're going to draw the bass clef. So now you're on the bottom 5 lines, and you are going to put a dot on the 4th line. Draw a big dot. And you're going to curve it over kind of like a snail. It touches the top, and it comes down to the bottom, or like an ear. Part of a year. So we're almost done with our bass clef, and now we have, you're gonna put 2 dots, so one in a space, in that 4th space, and this one in the 3rd space. So it almost kind of looks like a division sign. Yeah, good. So this sometimes, we call it the bass clef. You might even hear it heard as the F clef, because in between these 2 dots, if you have a note that sits on that line, that would be an F. And all musicians know that, which is very cool. So we have our G on the 2nd line in the treble clef. That's our G. And then we have our F, which is the 4th line on the bass clef. Kind of cool. Alrighty, excellent. Okay, if you have your candies, we are going to make a C major scale. Here we go. I have all my colors here. I was doing mine like a rainbow the other day, which is kind of fun. If you can do it in rainbow style or just whatever candy you have. Here we go. Oh, we need your marker one more time. Don't forget. Is for our first note for the C major scale is the C. And it's going to sit on that invisible line, but because we need it, we're going to draw a short little one right on that crease of where your hot dog was folded. So just a short little one, just enough so your Skittle can, or fruit snack can sit right on that C. And that's our middle C, which sounds like this. All right. So notice there's a line going through that. So our next Skittle is going to go in what's called a space. And we can we have to kind of imagine that space, right? Because again, we're imagining that this invisible line goes all the way across. So that orange Skittle is a D. I'm stepping up on the music staff. And then I'm just gonna put one on the first line, that's E, F, G. Going to put one on every space and every line. And yes, you can sneak and eat a couple candies while you're at it. Here's A. Let's scooch this over. Put B on this middle line. And we're going to go back to C. So I'm back to red on that fourth space. And I'm going to play the C major scale for you. So I'm literally reading music because I see each of these Skittles on a line and on a space. So that tells me to play every white key on the piano, which is actually very cool. All right. I'm going to play a piece for you guys right now. So again, because I know how to read music. I wish I had learned with Skittles, but I didn't. But this is the fun part now. I'm going to play a piece for you guys, and I'm not going to tell you the title. So you're going to see the music, so you're going to see what real music looks like if you haven't seen it. I bet most of you guys have. If you have, that's awesome. And we're going to follow along. Your task is to name the piece. So after I play it, we're going to ask you guys to either type it in or we can unmute yourself so that you can tell us what you think this piece is called. Right? You might recognize some of your things that we drew. We have the treble clef, we have the bass clef, we have that musical brace, right? So notice most of these notes right now are sitting in the bass clef, which means it's going to sound low. And then when it moves up into the treble clef, you're going to hear me play something that is higher in sound. Okay, so remember, we got to name this piece. Alrighty, Kay, I want to hear some ideas for what to title this piece. You can add it to the chat, or if you want to unmute yourselves, I would love to hear the kids what you guys think this piece is called.
Yeah. What do you think it should be called?
Feeling a little shy? Give me your best idea.
What is it?
The piano Skittle. No, the line of Skittles.
The line of Skittles, the piano Skittles. Because those notes were moving really fast, right? But you could see all those black dots moving around, just like your Skittles.
The nighttime dance.
Ooh, the nighttime dance. Ooh, I like that. You didn't just call it a dance, you said a nighttime, right? So you had you described it, because something about it made it sound kind of dark, right? So that one actually means, when it sounds dark, it means your piece is in the key, it's in a minor key. If something was really happy, it would be in a major key. And we have some skittly spider. Oh yeah, all those super fast notes kind of sounds like spiders just kind of running around everywhere. I hate spiders. Ugh, I don't like it. Yeah. Alrighty, so we have a music term I want to share with you guys. And so if we are, as a music reader, not only do we want to be able to read the notes, we also have, composers can give us other descriptions for how to play a piece. And this one at the top at the beginning, it says Allegro. So that's an Italian term, right? So as a musician, you get to learn a little bit of some other languages, which is very cool. So Allegro, because based on what you heard, what do you think Allegro means?
Fast.
Fast. You guys got it. That's awesome. Yep. So it means fast, right? So a composer can write that at the top of their piece so that I know how fast or how slow to play their piece. I love it. So Eric Baumgartner, the one that composed this piece, he titled it Whirlwind. Like whoosh, right? So the really fast wind and kind of like right before, like we had a storm on Wednesday, right? And we get the clouds were gray and the trees were blowing and hear these like little gusts of wind. And so when I saw the title, I went, ooh, it actually does sound like that, which is very cool. We're gonna do some games with your candy. So we have, I'm actually gonna clear my Skittles off real quick. And I'm gonna use another marker. You don't need to do this to yours. You can if you'd like, but I just wanna help you see it. So we have C on that middle C line. D is in the space. E is on the middle line. F is on the first space. G, A, B, C. You can write in those letters if you want, but you don't have to. I bet you guys can do it without it. Okay, so now your task is using your candy, so clear your board off, is I want you to spell the word cab, like a taxi cab in New York City using your candy. 5 more seconds. I'm gonna put mine on. 5. Let me choose a different color. A and B. All right, double check yours with mine. See if you have it on the right space and lines. C-A-B, and that's what this would sound like on the piano. Kind of silly. Alrighty, next word, spell egg. That's what I had for breakfast. I made myself an egg sandwich. To spell egg. All right, and here's mine. So here's E. It's on that first line. I'm gonna put a G right there. And guess what? I'm gonna use the same G right there. E, G, G. All right, so if a composer wants to use the same note, they can do that, right? We can have the same note next to each other. So even though that says A, that A is on the space, but you'll see my Skittle is on the second line. So E, G, G. Because our notes they can step up, they can step down, they can skip, right? So actually if I do C, I can skip the D and I can go to the E. I can skip the F and go to the G. I can skip on my music staff. Or I can step like when we did all the colors of the rainbow. Alrighty. I can go up, I can go down. Spell dad. Here's my D's on the space. I'm gonna go up to an A. I'm just gonna put it right there. So notice that I just have to be on the correct line or space. I don't have to put my Skittle right there. I can just put it right after the D, A. And then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna use the same D. I'm starting on the D. I'm gonna go up and come back down. Now here's also a cool thing. So we did C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We're gonna repeat our music alphabet. So I could also use, so if this C is on the fourth space, that means, on the third space, that means that next one is also a D. It's just a higher D. So I could also play D, A, D, like D, up, up. So I can get higher as we go. Or I can come back here, D, up, and come back down. It's kind of cool. Reading a music and learning how to read music and music theory, it tells us which way to go on our piano or where to go on our violin or cello, anything you want it to be. Alrighty, one more. Spell bed. Ooh, and Mindy said it's a map. Absolutely. Learning how to read music and learning about music theory, it's definitely a map for musicians. It tells us exactly where to go, how far to go, how long to stay in that spot. Excellent. Okay, here is also this one. Notice that they got a little bit harder each time. So I'm going to put B right there. B, E. And I'm going to choose to step down to this D. B, E, D. And that could sound like this. Or maybe you chose to use that one. Then that would sound like this. B, oh, sorry. B, E, D. Okay. Everything always sounds just a little bit different. All righty. Okay. If eat, B-E-D, you can eat those three. We might still need the other ones just for a little bit longer, but you can eat those three. Okay. I'm going to show you guys one more really cool thing about the relationship between our keyboard and our music. And I'm going to spotlight this video so you guys can see it. So this is kind of cool. My camera's above my head. Whoa! Hi! Okay. So I've drawn this really, really big grand staff. It's a really, really big one. It's really big for a reason, right? That's my middle C line. That's the invisible part. Okay. All right. So essentially, this is your grand staff. So the thing about the relationship between why we need to learn how to read music on paper so that we know how to play on an instrument is this is really cool. I'm going to take my grand staff and I'm going to turn it clockwise. I'm going to line this up here. Boom. So I've actually lined because I know where middle C is. Put this guy right here. Because I know where middle C is, that's going to line up with my middle line. And then as we keep going, here's a space. So remember, now I'm looking at my grand staff sideways, which is kind of crazy. Here's E, that first line, it lines up right with it. Here's F, that goes in that space. Here's that G, when you were drawing your treble clef, it wraps around that second line. Here's your A. B is in the line, and we're back to C, which is kind of cool. I remember when my first teacher showed me this, I went, whoa, what? What do you mean that's all connected? And guess what? It would work the same way. So here's middle C. I could B, I could go down. Notice I'm going backwards now with my alphabet. A, G, and F. That's right in between your two dots for your bass clef. That line's the F. Alrighty, cool. Okay, so let's see. I would love, so the cool thing is, let me switch this back to me so you guys can see me talking to you. Here we go. When I was in college, I had a music teacher ask me, how many lines are on the grand staff? Well, she wasn't asking just me. She was asking a classroom full of musicians. And we all said, well, there's 10. There's 10 lines on the grand staff. And she goes, are you sure? And I went, but what? Well, yeah. We drew 10 lines, didn't we? So there's 10 lines on the grand staff. We only see 10 lines as a pianist, I see 10 lines when I'm reading my music. And she goes, that's where you're wrong. The grand staff has 11 lines. Because remember, when you folded your paper in half, that invisible one, that absolutely counts as a line because there's a note that can sit on that line. So that's now something that you can go around and be like, hey, do you know how many lines are on a grand staff? And most people, if they've seen piano music, they might say, oh, there's 10 lines. You go, ha, there's 11. There's one in the middle that you can't see, which is very cool. It wears an invisible cloak unless it wants to be seen, which is really cool. All righty. Okay, let's see. I'm going to play one more piece for you guys. You'll notice at the beginning of the piece, it says moderately, or also known as moderato. If you're using the Italian term, it's moderato. Notice that Randall Hartzell, the composer, he's telling me to play it moderately and calmly. So that helps me know what kind of mood he's in. He can also tell me what mood I'm in with the title. I know what the title is, but you guys don't yet. Because again, you guys get to think of the title. You'll notice in your music, I see quite a lot of things, right? I see the notes, which were your Skittles. I see some numbers. I see some really long lines. I see some notes that are filled in. I see some notes that are empty. I see some weird looking things that look like a hashtag to us. Those are called sharp signs, right? So there's actually a lot in music theory that tells us all these different things that we need to know as a musician. But it's totally worth learning about them because I can turn it into beautiful music like this one. So I'm gonna switch my camera so you can see my hands playing this time. And it's really cool because it's just, all I'm doing is reading music and I can make it sound exactly the way the composer wants. Or even I can add in my own ideas as well.
Grazing through the meadow.
Summer forest. What?
The pond forest.
The pond. The pond forest.
Ooh, I can hear a little bit of water. I love these titles. You guys are such good listeners, right? Because if you weren't listening, you wouldn't be able to think about the characters. So if you're listening to this webinar as a teacher, there's so many ways to introduce the basics and of music reading to your students. And a lot of it is, I always come back to, is the why, right? I know that both teaching little kids and adults throughout my career, the adults are usually the one that ask me, well, why? But why? And right now with my 5-year-old niece, that's her favorite question is why? And so we can do our best to answer that question for them, so to help them see the relationship between, well, you're right, why do I need to figure out what all these dots on the lines mean and whether the dots are on the space or on a line? It's so that you can turn it into music, and it is so worth it to be able to play music, and it's just so much fun. Thanks for watching, and check out our other Food for Musical Thought webinars.